You know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
And we are live. Greetings to our loyal WFYL listeners around the world. Welcome back to your Philadelphia live stream, only on the Freedom Station. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in once again, because you still have the right to hear and the right to be heard. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike G. As always, with me are Philly Chris, Russ, the producer, and Liberty Lee. And you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters. And you can listen to our program every Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So let's be heard. I want to remind our listeners that you can participate in the free and open exchange of thoughts and ideas throughout the entire week by visiting MikeGinTheMorning.com. What's it called, Philly Chris?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
How about you, Russ?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
I don't think that's what it's called. What's it called?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
Woo! How about you, Liberty?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
Special guest Oliver Krawczyk. What's it called?
Sounds to me like MikeGinTheMorning.com.
That is correct, sir. So tell your friends, tell your barber, tell your family, tell your Uncle Jerry, tell anybody to listen to check us out at MikeGinTheMorning.com. I also want to remind our listeners about the powerhouse lineup we've got here at the Freedom Station. Kick off your mornings with Scott Adams, bringing you the Scott Adams Show weekdays from 9 a.m. until 11. We've got the one and only Dan the Man Bongino, bring you the Dan Bongino Show weekdays from noon until 3 p.m. We've got the headliner, intellectual giant Ben Shapiro, bring you the Ben Shapiro Show weekdays from 3 to 5 p.m. Don't miss it. And finally, we love having him at the Freedom Station family. We've got Michael Knowles, bring you the Michael Knowles Show weekdays from 5 to 6 p.m. So don't forget to tune in and show him some love. I also want to remind our listeners that today's episode of the Mike G in the Morning program is brought to you by Elite Tactical Armory, your firearms storage solution in the Lehigh Valley. Do you know what a tactical armory is? Well, PA recently recognized through the Pennsylvania legislature the commercial armory is being an acceptable mechanism for off-site firearm storage. There are tons of reasons why you might need to use a commercial armory. Perhaps you're going out of town for a little while. Maybe your kid is on probation. Maybe your scorned ex-wife is accusing you again. Or perhaps you've just run out of room for all your precious babies. Either way, Elite Tactical Armory is the storage solution for you. They are also offering qualification courses for New Jersey permits to carry. That's right. You heard me right. You can thank the Supreme Court of the United States for that, even though New Jersey is trying to make it a living nightmare for everybody. But check out Elite Tactical Armory at EliteTacticalArmory.com or PACommercialArmory.com. That's EliteTacticalArmory.com or PACommercialArmory.com, because it's important to support those who support freedom. And be sure and tell them Mike G sent you. And with that, you know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Hit it, Russ.
You know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
We've got a very special episode of the Mike G in the Morning program today. We've got my partner in crime, Gilbert Ambler of Ambler Law Offices, joining us from the road. Right out there on the road, Gilbert, we got you.
You do. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And the man of the hour, he's the star of this show this evening. We have Oliver Krawczyk from Ambler Law Offices. Oliver, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. What an intro.
So, Oliver, first of all, we've got to get this out there. I heard you describe this to an ATF agent last week. We had a meeting with some ATF agents, and Oliver said that he did his time in New Jersey. Is that an accurate description, Oliver?
About 23 years of it, yeah.
Oh, wow. 23 years of it. Were you into firearms growing up?
I was. I didn't have much of an opportunity to really exercise that right. I went to college at Rutgers, so it's not like you can carry a gun legally in New Brunswick, New Jersey, although you probably should. But I always had always an interest in things, mechanical kind of stuff, so it was pretty natural for me to really get into guns once I hopped the border.
And you and I share that in common. We've sort of got this different perspective. Gilbert, when did you start firing guns?
Having grown up on a farm, I think I probably started around 6 or 7 years old.
That's how it is. When you get out of diapers, that's when you're old enough, right?
Well, really, once you can pick it up, I think they let you start.
You get a different perspective, a different kind of appreciation. Not that somebody like Gilbert who grew up around firearms doesn't appreciate them just as much. It's just a different way when you're sort of deprived all those years, and then you find out, hey, there's the rest of the country here that exercises this fundamental right. Am I hitting that on the nose, Oliver?
Absolutely. Once I had a little bit of money to go around, it was just catch-up time. I can't tell you how many multiple sale reports I probably generated at my FFL. But,
Good for you.
So, Oliver, you're attending law school right now. You're about to finish up. You'll be an attorney practicing law here pretty soon.
That's right. It's looking like 4 months until I get that JD. Currently a third-year student at Penn State Dickinson Law in Carlisle, PA. Having a great time here. It's a fantastic institution, and the opportunities to really practice, even, I mean, not officially practice, but get that experience, that practical experience while in school are incredible. And, it's such a stroke of luck to have gotten involved with Gilbert here and to be doing some really important work in the firearms kind of realm.
Now, you've worked with Ambler law offices for most of your education. Is that correct?
That's right. Since the end of my first year, I actually got recommended to reach out to him by one of our deans at the school. And so really the rest was history.
Did you quickly find out how little they actually teach you in law school about practicing law?
You get some good fundamentals, but yeah, it's really just you learn the contours, I think, of the industry, and then it's up to the actual practical experience to sort of fill in the gaps.
They always tell you law school is just to teach you how to think like a lawyer, right?
Yep.
They still using that one?
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's good that you got that experience early on, and I'm sure you're head and shoulders above many of your other classmates in that regard. Now, you're also an intellectual type because you recently authored a law review article that was published and is gaining quite a bit of traction from what I understand, correct?
I understand the same. One technicality, our law review publishes both articles and comments. And so the articles are, that term is reserved for the practitioner and the professor written pieces. And then comments are the student written works. But, colloquially, yeah, it's an article, I guess you could say.
That's ridiculous. It's a distinction without a difference,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound fair.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the article?
Sure.
Or the comment. I'm sorry. See, I already got it wrong. I already got it wrong.
I wasn't going to catch you on that.
I'm going to fact check.
I wasn't going to catch you there. But broadly speaking, satellite view, not even bird's eye. I talk a little bit about the National Firearms Act of 1934. I would argue one of the most consequential federal gun control laws that is still in effect. And I apply the framework that was established by District of Columbia v. Heller, interpreting United States v. Miller. So we're talking about Supreme Court cases ranging from the 1930s to 2008, and arguing that some of the weapons that the National Firearms Act regulates are getting common enough that the continued regulation of those arms is constitutionally unsound.
I like that. Let's check in with some of our listeners right now. We've got Rita checking in. Give her a hey now, Philly Chris.
Hey now, Rita. Hey now.
We got Len Larson. He's out of Jersey. He's continuing to do time over there. Give Len a hey now, Philly Chris.
Ladies and gentlemen, hey now, Len.
We got DG checking in for Hey Now.
DG coming at you live. DG, hey now.
Chief Andre Boyer. He's the
Yeah.
protector over at the gas station in Philadelphia. The protector, the armed protector. They're not security officers. They don't just watch things. Yeah, give Chief Boyer a hey now.
Hey now, Chief. Yeah, if you didn't get to see him on the show, he was on a few weeks back and a lot of views on his interview on the show. Thanks for tuning in.
Check out that episode. Scott checking in. Give him a hey now.
Hey now. Hey now.
We got Tom. Give him a hey now. Give Tom a hey
Tom,
now.
hey now. Welcome to the show.
Stacks checking in. Give him a hey now.
Stacks. Hey now, Stacks.
And finally, we've got Randy. Randy, give him
Randy. Hey now, Randy. Hey now. Welcome to the show.
So, just for a brief overview for everybody who's listening, I read a statistic at some point that fewer than 1% of all gun owners in the United States own an item that's regulated under the National Firearms Act. Does that sound right to you, Oliver?
I have no idea. That's an interesting stat. Though you could technically do the math because we have the public numbers on the registry.
On that, Gilbert?
And I didn't.
I would have thought that's an old statistic. I would have thought that the numbers are picking up. You know, when you look at the massive explosion of suppressor, silencer, as the law would call them, sales over the past several years, I don't think it's the same, couple hundred gun owners that have bought millions of silencers. I think it's a lot of different people dipping their feet in the water, getting into NFA items.
Even if so, I can't imagine it's more than 10%. Would that be fair?
Sure, I could buy that.
So let's say that's the case. The bottom line is that there are many gun owners who have virtually no experience with the National Firearms Act. And that's where you can get in trouble if you don't know about this stuff. So just as a brief crash course for everybody who's out there, as Oliver mentioned, the National Firearms Act of 1934 was the first major piece of legislation we saw restricting our firearms rights at the federal level. It was a knee-jerk reaction to the St. Valentine's Day massacre. And Congress got together and they decided we're going to take these super scary items and we're going to throw them on a list. And what kinds of items ended up on that list? Well, you've got your silencers, suppressors, like we were talking about. We've got your short-barreled rifles, which is barrel length less than 16 inches, overall length less than 26 inches. You've got your short-barreled shotguns, barrel length less than 18 inches, overall length less than 26 inches. You got the category of any other weapon. You got the category of destructive devices. And you've got your fully automatic weapons, even though those are further restricted by the Hughes Amendment. Thanks to whom, Oliver? Who signed that into law in 1986?
Well, it was indeed Ronald Reagan, but I will say that it seemed to have been his veto-proof supermajority, so I don't think he had much of a choice.
Okay, it's not his fault. You're giving him a pass on that one. Don't give him a pass. What do they call that law? What do they call that law?
That's the Firearms Owners Protection Act.
What? The Firearm Protection Act. You like how they did that to us, right? This is good. And just so if everybody who is listening, if you're curious about what we're talking about, it's the reason why us common peasants here can't own fully automatic weapons that were manufactured after May of 1986. So every fully automatic weapon in existence that common peasants like you and I can own has been in existence before Oliver, Gilbert, and I were born. Not Philly Chris. He's been around for a while.
Right. Like 100 years
but that's why they're so expensive, because there's just this limited supply. And so Congress got together, they put together this list. They said, if you want the privilege to own one of these items, you've got to register them with government and you pay a tax. And people sometimes wonder why they did this as a taxing scheme. Believe it or not, if the Constitution, Congress only has specific enumerated powers. I know we forget about this all the time. And Congress thought there was no way that they had the authority to regulate firearms otherwise. But practically speaking, the tax was cost prohibitive for a lot of people because the tax is what, Oliver? How much?
$200.
Yeah, and most of these transfers is $200, which doesn't sound like a whole lot for us today. But you got to consider the inflation, right? My dad always tells me hot dogs cost a nickel in Coney Island when he was growing up. And average family car was $550 back then. So this was cost prohibitive. Just to play, right? Not buy the item firearm. Just to play, you got to pay this tax. And we do this today through the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the ATF. So, Oliver, what really led you to write this article? Was this something that was bouncing around your mind for a while?
It was for a little bit. I do frequent some online circles, Reddit, r/NFA, r/gun deals, etc., where people have been talking about the increasing popularity over the years of NFA items, and it sparked my interest as I joined the Law Review after my first year in law school, and we all, as members, have to write something that's of publishable quality. Not all pieces are selected. It's sort of an anonymous selection process, but I figured why not, just throw myself out there as the 2A absolutist that I am, and why not try to explore this and hopefully make a good argument that some of these NFA items actually are common enough that arguably they should be protected by the Second Amendment, and that they should not be taxed and felonized to the point where you can go to jail for a very long time just for having one that you didn't pay a tax on.
Now I realize that my comment regarding that statistic might lead somebody to believe that they're not so such common use at the time. It depends on where you draw that line as to what is common use at the time, because if you're talking about a percentage of all gun owners, right? There are a lot of gun owners in this country. So even a small percentage could still be in common use at the time, right? Think about it. If you have a vehicle that 1 in 100 people have it, it's still in common use, I'd say.
Yeah, and it's a problem in terms of what common use even means, right? And sort of phrased in the alternative, it's arms that are in common use, or arms that are typically possessed by law-abiding citizens for lawful purposes, some version of that. But there really are no Supreme Court level rules or really guidance as to how you determine something is common. You have a bunch of cases saying handguns are common, and then you had in 2016, I believe I'm saying it correctly, Caetano v. Massachusetts, and they basically found that stun guns are common with very little of a framework that's been posed to determine whether other things can be common. And so it's anyone's guess whether a short-barreled rifle could be considered common if there are about 600,000 on the registry, or 2.6 million in the case of suppressors. So this hopefully is a first step, or one of the first steps in hopefully a field of scholarly publication that sort of develops the standard a little bit more, that maybe some courts can draw upon in the future when hopefully more NFA challenges start coming through the pipeline.
Well, I'd like to see it spring into action rather than in that realm. I think that a lot of times when you get a good article out there, it gives people these ideas, and then you see litigation that follows. This is completely unrelated to issue, but I wrote an article when I was in law school about Section 2 Act, and you had litigation along that same, and it's not necessarily somebody's biting off of it. I'm not saying that they stole my idea and went and sued everybody, but when you got a good idea, a lot of times these things will come into fruition. Gilbert, I want to ask you from your perspective, how do you see Oliver's comment, we'll call it, becoming a reality and having impact in jurisprudence? Do you see this as a civil challenge? Do you see this being used as a defense in a criminal case? What do you see?
So more than likely a civil challenge. I mean, the ATF might go out of their way to try to make Oliver's comment a reality if they were to take something as common as braced pistols, which I think the estimates on braced pistols is somewhere around 40 million braced pistols in existence, and decide that braced pistols are really short-barreled rifles. Because if we cross that bridge where a braced pistol, of which there's 40 million, is a short-barreled rifle, I think that plays directly into Oliver's thesis here, and his comment, into the theory that that is, in fact, common use and therefore protected by the Second Amendment.
So we're seeing, we're hearing that this is coming down any day now, correct?
Allegedly coming down January 23rd right now, although they have pushed that deadline 2 or 3.
I'm losing him a little bit. Oliver, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but not really him.
All right, so you're going to take over here, Oliver. I think he said
Sure.
January 23rd.
Something about that. I think there's a pending challenge, and so there have been status conferences and filings that some people in the know have been referring to, and so that's where we get those dates as to when the ATF might expect to drop that rule. But the numbers he was referencing, the 40 million braced pistols, that comes from a congressional report that estimated the number of braces out there to be between maybe 10 and 40 million. There's so many that you can't even get a really accurate number out there. And it's certainly more than the ATF's estimate at, I think, 3 to 7 million in the initial proposed rule that they published. But in any case, we're talking about millions and millions and millions of mostly, I would say, AR pattern, maybe AK pattern firearms that plenty of people own these days. And, they use for lawful purposes, whether that's home defense, purely collecting, or just, looking at them sitting pretty on the wall or in the safe. These are ubiquitous firearms, and they stand to be reclassified as short-barreled rifles, subject to taxation and criminal penalties if you don't.
What happens if you don't have it, right? If it's subject to the NFA and you haven't paid that tax, you go away for a long while, right?
That's right. And normally, if you're in possession of an NFA item without having registered it, there's no mechanism to register it. That loophole got plugged several decades ago. And so you come across a machine gun on the street and you decide you're going to keep it. You can't go ahead and register that. That's you're committing a crime just by possessing it.
It's a bag of cocaine for all they're concerned. They don't care how you got it, what you want to do with it. It's a bag of cocaine. The fact that you have it is no go. So, Oliver, why don't you...
Well, I was going to say, isn't it true, guys, that on that same date in New Jersey, slingshots, rocks, and pencils become SBRs? Or am I wrong?
Gilbert, I don't want to cut you off. What do you got?
Sorry.
Yeah, and I was going to say, there is a distinction between making, although you cannot make a machine gun for civilian use, you can make these other categories of weapons subject to Form 1 approval. So that's just one other important distinction when we talk about this. Although often misunderstood as well, the process. I had somebody actually in a class that I taught tonight tell me that a police detective had advised her after the second break-in on her home to cut down the barrel on her shotgun so that the pattern would spread more rapidly. And so thankfully she had not taken his advice, but he had said nothing about Form 1 approval. Just take a hacksaw to it.
Well, how far did he tell her to cut it down?
Get the tape measure out in that situation, yeah.
That's the relevant question. Yeah, well, you don't want to use a tape measure. That's not how they do it. You got to get a towel rod and everything. We actually made a video years ago on how they do it.
Yeah.
Russ, is that you? You hear that squeak, Philly Chris?
I didn't hear it actually. Fortunately, I didn't hear it.
Okay,
yeah.
But
it probably would be Russ if it's a squeak. Yeah.
Oliver or Gilbert, I don't know who wants to handle this, but I want to talk to our listeners a little bit about what exactly these AR pistols are and the whole idea of a brace and everything, because it's entirely possible that there are people who are listening that aren't familiar with this stuff. So, Gilbert, if you're there, I'll give you the opportunity to pipe in. If you're unavailable, Oliver will take over.
Chief had a question in the comments too there.
Yeah, so a braced pistol is going to be, and keep in mind our definition of a pistol is a weapon designed and intended to be fired from one hand. Although people commonly shoot handguns, shoot pistols with two hands, the intent is it can be fired from one hand. And several years ago, several companies figured out that they could attach braces to the rear part of a handgun, and that would assist people in discharging a weapon, especially disabled folks, people that might struggle with the weight of some of the heavier handguns. It would help them discharge the firearms with one hand, and so they could be strapped to your forearm. Some of them are simply stabilizing braces that sort of counterbalance the weight of the handgun forward of your hand. And the ATF, although they've been wishy-washy, they've gone back and forth a couple of times, they have always been in the position where they approved the sale of these braced pistols. What they've been wishy-washy on is whether you can ever put the braced pistol up to your shoulder. Although currently they're saying, yes, you can put a braced pistol up to your shoulder. They have gone back and forth on this, and it looks like there's now going to be a new iteration of the ATF's rulings where they say now if there is a brace on a pistol, if it meets their criteria, they no longer will consider a pistol, no longer consider a weapon designed and intended to be fired from one hand, but would now consider a short-barreled rifle subject to the National Firearms Act.
And they've got a pretty complicated system. I know Rick Vasquez, who's been on this program before, put out a little bit of a memo for everybody to read as to what turns, according to this ATF ruling that's coming down, would turn your braced AR pistol into a short-barreled rifle. It's not exactly a simple bright line test, is it?
Not at all. And in talking with Rick actually about this test, it's a subjective criteria, meaning one weapon could be analyzed by the ATF and reach one conclusion, and per the ATF's internal worksheet, a different examiner could examine the same weapon and reach an opposite conclusion. So if that's the format that the rule comes down in, what they're doing is they're de facto making these items where no one's going to want to roll the dice, even if one examiner were to say this criteria, a weapon that fits this pattern is lawful, you're still rolling the dice that somebody else takes a look at it and takes the opposite position.
Oliver, what do you think about all this? As somebody who's a hardline Second Amendment guy, you see something like this, not even, take off your attorney hat for a second here. What do you think about all this?
It's just another way for the powers that be to further limit the types of arms that the population has access to. It's nothing more than that. It's not about public safety. It's not about, we just want to clarify what the law says. It's everybody knows that there's so many millions of braced pistols out there that, interfering with their ownership in this regard is purely done to, screw with the industry, screw with gun owners, and hopefully get some registrations, maybe some revenue from compelled registrations along the way.
Well, do you think that it's a problem that we've got an agency effectively rewriting the laws on these kinds of things? Now, I understand that they're tasked with enforcing the law, so they've got to come up with something and draw a line somewhere. But when they go into this amount of detail and take something out of everybody's hands and continue to flip-flop on how they interpret the law, isn't that a problem that they could do that without going through the legislature?
It's a big problem, and you can partly blame Congress for that. We have a tradition in the current, administrative state of affairs that we have in this country where Congress writes, pretty vague laws that need further elaboration, and they delegate a lot of that authority to executive agencies to then promulgate rules. And so I see a lot of, pushback from people who might not be fully aware of how the federal government sort of works on this front. And they say, ATF isn't Congress. They can't legislate. They can't do this and that. But unfortunately, this is sort of what we're dealing with, where Congress, passes a law that says, hey, a rifle is something that's designed and intended to be fired from the shoulder, and then they don't really define what a stock is, a shoulder stock. And so it's down to the so-called experts in these enforcement agencies to sort of promulgate rules that further define what these are. So really, I think the blame lies with the political class as a whole.
Did it blow your mind when you started to pay attention to this stuff about how they can just flip-flop and rewrite the law, and people can end up in serious trouble doing something that they told everybody just a short while ago was perfectly okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a small footnote, and that's one thing about my article comment, we'll say, whatever.
It's an article. Let's just call it an article. Sure. I don't care what they say. If they give you a hard time, tell them I said it's okay.
Fair enough. But that's one thing that I had a lot of fun with, which is really putting a lot of effort into the footnotes. And that's actually how I was able to squeeze in more word count and page count probably than I would have otherwise been allowed to do. We had a hard stop of like 30 pages in our Word template, and I squeezed in a lot of single spaced kind of stuff in the footnotes. And so they're worth a read. But one footnote in particular, I talk about how the Striker 12, I believe, started life as a shotgun, and then the ATF said, well, wait a second, that's actually a destructive device. And so anybody that owned one had to, go register that. And there were probably plenty of very displeased people who either had to, give them up because they didn't want to give their fingerprints, their photograph, their address, everything to the federal government. And then those who clearly did, and they joined the registry. And now we have, one less type of shotgun out there to enjoy because, the agency can flip-flop with very little accountability whatsoever.
They changed their mind. That's what it kind of, we changed their mind.
Yeah.
Gilbert, I want to get into some practical stuff because one of the things that we put out with the description of this episode, we're going to talk about surprising reasons that people can end up in jail. And I think that the NFA is perfectly ripe for this kind of thing. We see people who have no idea that what they're doing is unlawful. Like you mentioned about cutting down the barrel, had somebody chop down their barrel less than 18 inches on a shotgun. Like we said, barrel length less than 18 inches, overall length less than 26 inches. You've just put yourself in a position where you could go away for a long, long while. And people might say, well, what's the difference between having an 18 and a half and a 17 and a half? Years in prison. That's the difference.
10 years in prison to be specific.
Just to be specific, 10 years in prison to be specific. Not to say that practically speaking, it does anything. I mean, I'd be interested to see some kind of a ballistics test on 18 and a half versus 17 and a half. Biden and say, well, when it goes to 17 and a half, it blows a hole in their head this size. It's the size of a pumpkin. And you can't survive once it goes below 18 inches. It's kind of hysterical how and this is legislation we're talking about here, right? So they actually did come out with these numbers, and the legislature passed these things. So if we see something like that is so arbitrary and ridiculous, it goes to another level of bonkers when you have an agency doing something like that. Gilbert, I want to ask you, do you think of any examples where somebody, aside from what you just mentioned, which I think is a great example, but any other examples where you found that somebody was going to do something and was unaware that it was going to violate the National Firearms Act?
Well, same type of example, but I love seeing the virtue signaling politicians after a tragedy make a public stance by cutting up their firearms and in the process cutting the barrel up first and thereby illegally manufacturing a short-barreled rifle or short-barreled shotgun. And we've seen that happen on more than one occasion. I don't know that there's been any prosecutions for it, but, there should be. Or maybe there should not be. I mean, maybe there shouldn't be an NFA at all. But the other one that I think comes to mind is... Well,
if they're going to charge everybody else, right? If they're going to send people like us to jail, then, they got to be fair about it, no?
It depends if you're related to... Or if your last name's Biden, something like that. I don't know.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, the other way I see it, that comes to mind is vertical foregrips. And vertical foregrips on AR pattern pistol or something that the ATF is going to say now makes any other weapon. This is something that they reversed course on a couple years back, where in the past they had said if the handgun had an overall length of over 26 inches, you could safely add a vertical foregrip, and then they switched paths on that. Now, even if it's over 26 inches overall length, if you add a vertical foregrip to a handgun, ATF says that unlawfully makes any other weapon.
So I have a quick question. If you don't mind.
People out there, hold on one second though. I just want to make clear there are people out there who could have very well been in compliance at the time and had an AR pistol with a vertical foregrip, not knowing about this, magical ruling that comes down. And now they're in possession of something that could send them to jail for 10 years. I'm correct in stating that, right, Gilbert?
That is correct.
So if you're one of those people, Better be careful. Look in your closet. Chris, I'll let you ask your question.
No, I was just thinking about something you talk about in your seminars, Mike, all the time, and I'm sure you do too, Gilbert, about the fact that deadly force is deadly force. So where is there reasoning or justification or science, to support that any of these firearms are more dangerous than other ones? Or is it the concealability, or what is their reasoning at all for all of this crazy stuff that people need to know about and not know about, to put their freedom in jeopardy? Like, what are they saying to the public that is their reason for all this stuff, I guess, from a layman's perspective?
You're asking for science and logic to support these laws, really?
Well, I'm trying to point out that there is none, essentially.
Okay, let's make believe that we're on the other side. All right, exactly. That's what we'll do. We'll make believe that we're on the other side, and as lawyers, sometimes we have to do that. We have to defend positions that are beneficial to our client, even though in our head we're like, I can't believe I got to try to make this one with a straight face. But I want you to try to support these things. Oliver, go ahead. You're first.
You can look to the original drafting sessions of the NFA in the 1930s, where these are gangster weapons. These are gangster weapons that are being used in mass shootings in the cities. Look at the evil Tommy gun that nobody can afford, and most certainly nobody besides Al Capone can have. But never mind that. And never mind the fact that Hollywood bought up all of the Tommy guns because they weren't selling well before World War II, and they all showed up in movies, and everybody thought that, that must have been the reality. But anyway, but yeah, these are gangster weapons. They have no lawful purpose besides being used in crimes. Many of them are concealable. And that's one thing that I touched on in the article, we'll call it article, is that the NFA originally was supposed to include pistols and revolvers. There was a major concern that these were among the most concealable weapons, at all, in addition to any other weapons, your pen guns, cane guns, whatever. And the pistols and revolvers were removed from the NFA pretty late in the game, as I understand it, not subsequent, after it was passed, but before it was passed, that they realized that, hey, this is going to implicate pretty much every gun in the country. And so really it was a purportedly, anti-crime sort of rationale. And nowadays the courts will say that these are dangerous and unusual weapons. And that goes to the title of my piece, where these are weapons that historically, apparently, are considered to be dangerous and unusual, where they are more dangerous than the typical firearm, and they are indeed unusual because typical law-abiding members of society just don't own these for lawful purposes. They're used by gangsters and they're used in shootings, and these aren't sportsmen or hunting sort of implements. But the snag is that that's not what the Second Amendment protects. It's not purely about hunting or sport. It's about resisting tyranny and being outfitted, ideally as well as your government is, because otherwise you're just going to be subordinate to them. Yeah. And so that's sort of how the continued prohibition is rationalized now. But one thing to note from Caetano v. Massachusetts, it's Alito's concurrence, where he sort of goes into development of the dangerous and unusual test, where he says, it's conjunctive. You need to meet both requirements in order to be able to ban something so that it's not protected by the Second Amendment. And so, there might be some assessment as to whether something is dangerous more so than other weapons, but really you also need to show that it's unusual too. And if everybody has a suppressor at the range when I go and, show up and, I see everybody having a good time and not blowing their eardrums out, is it really that unusual if everybody's partaking for lawful purposes?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Makes sense. Yeah. Thank you. Good explanation. Yeah. So some guns are bad and scary, basically.
Yeah. I was going to say, aren't all guns dangerous?
right. Some are more scary.
I don't think we're denying that they're dangerous. Yeah. We just think that, as Manny McMahon once said, I don't think the government should have a monopoly on danger. That's all. Yeah. That's what it comes down to. I think we got Gilbert back. Gilbert, did you have anything to add? We're arguing on the other side over here as to why. I think there was really a law that was prejudiced against Italian Americans, right? They said, all these Italians are running around with these guns, so therefore they must be. We got to ban them. We can't have Italians walking around with these kinds of guns.
That's like a discrimination suit right there.
I think just to chime in, I think we have somebody in the chat who is asking how to ask questions. You can actually just type your question in the chat, And Mike G will see it, and he'll say it on the air.
There we go.
All right. For those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So, Oliver, how can people watch this? Take a look at this article. How can they read it? How can they get a hold of it? Is there any way that they can do so?
Absolutely. So if you go to dickinsonlawreview.org, that is dickinsonlawreview.org. I'm right there on the homepage. Just scroll down a little bit and you'll see something by me, Oliver Krawczyk, that is entitled Dangerous and Unusual, How an Expanding National Firearms Act Will Spell Its Own Demise. Click on that. You can read the abstract. If the abstract piques your curiosity, then you can click download, and it's about a 35-page PDF. It's also been reported on Westlaw, Lexis already for those attorneys out there, or whoever is paying to have access, I guess. And so you can find it sort of reproduced over there. And I think it's a worthwhile read, even for people who might not be attorneys or in law school, because I try to make it accessible to people who, might not be entirely familiar, and it's hopefully not so full of legal jargon that I lose you, on the first page.
So here's what I want you to do, if you can. We're bringing Gilbert back in, so I'll direct some questions to him. If you can get that link,
sure.
If you can get a link to it and you can post it as a comment, does it allow you to post the public comments, whether it's the public or private? If it allows you to do it in the private chat, then we can post it in the public chat.
I'll do private.
Yep. Okay, then we'll go ahead and we'll post that, and we'll link it in the YouTube video as well, so people who watch this after the fact can go ahead and check it out. Gilbert, we got you back. I'm very sad we don't have Gilbert back.
Maybe not.
All right, we'll get him back eventually. We do see cases all the time of people who unwittingly violate the NFA, whether it's a barrel length, but with AR pistols in particular, there have been multiple people who are none the wiser and throw a stock on it. And what might happen is they may see perhaps videos of people who were firing from the shoulder with a brace and mistakenly think, oh, they've got a stock on that. That looks like it works pretty good. Mm-hmm. And then therefore throw a stock on their AR pistol, turning it into a short-barreled rifle. So that puts people into a whole lot of trouble. Seen that happen quite a bit. And there are just multiple ways. We get the solvent trap issues, right, Oliver? Those are
your Form 1s, yeah.
Yeah, they've got all kinds of things that people are getting into where they read some misinformation on the internet as to, oh, this is perfectly legal, you can do it. Or they won't even talk about the legalities of it. They'll say, this is what you have to do in order to make X, Y, or Z. Or this is what you have to do, this kind of modification can be done to your firearm. Let's see if we get Gilbert back over here.
There we go. Welcome back.
Ooh, maybe not.
I thought we had him.
He's on the move.
He's on the move. It sounds like he's in an airplane, right?
A busy guy, that Gilbert.
Airplane of sorts. Teslas are kind of like an airplane.
Yeah, pretty much.
Russ, the producer, while Oliver's posting, I understand that you were down with the turnip, and we can't say the C word on the air. But people know that we haven't been on the air in a couple of weeks. I know that we had the holidays, but you were down with the turnip. Maybe he passed away from the turnip.
Again, maybe.
The media wasn't kidding.
Yeah, right.
It'll get you.
A lot of people are disappearing live on the air, so maybe it just
disappeared. Oh, yeah. Russ said his internet something was off, so he's going back on and off.
Okay.
Oh, did Russ have the turnip? Can you confirm that, Liberty? That Russ had the turnip?
Yeah, tell us about it, Liberty.
I don't know if I'm allowed to.
He had the turnip pretty bad, didn't he?
Am I legally allowed to say somebody else had the turnip?
It seems like we can say more again now. They're not quite as on top of banning people and all that stuff. It seems like I noticed the fact checker stuff is a little different now too. They're not outright saying
no, Philly Chris, not the fact checkers, Russ himself. I don't want to give out his medical information, but if he did have the turnip, Not saying if he did or didn't.
I think we already pretty much put it out there.
Yeah, I think he's okay. I think his symptoms, maybe if he had it, were mainly congestion, serious congestion. And I do think that the turnip is turning more to congestive type of thing. It's less in the lungs, but don't take my word for it. Obviously, talk to your doctor. But I do believe it's more in the realm of congestion, head, fatigue, aches kind of thing. And I did read an article recently that's more aches and stuff like that.
Oliver,
Hopefully
when you came on, I'm sure you didn't think we'd be talking about mucus, did you?
I'm so out of the loop on this.
Have you had the turnip, Oliver? Have you had the turnip?
What would that be?
It's the C word. We can't talk about.
Oh yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, we don't want that. I had it back when it was alpha, so I had it before it was cool. Probably April of 2020-ish.
Okay.
And everybody's experience, as I understand, is a little bit different, but I had flus that were worse. And so I guess I got lucky with that. But the longest and most surprising sort of after effect of that was, for me, brain fog that lasted maybe 1 or 2 months. And I completely lost my sense of taste and smell for about as long as well. Yeah. And it very slowly came back, and I think my neurons had to readapt and relearn what smells were, because things smelled a little bit different for the next year or so. But overall, I've had flus that were worse. So I guess I got off pretty easy.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. That when the first time I had it, similar, the brain fog was a major issue. Yeah. And it was really unlike anything else as far as overall symptoms. Probably on the same plane with you. Have had flus that are worse. I had this very strange symptom where I had this undying urge to buy firearms, and I couldn't stop. I don't know. It wouldn't go away. It's still with me. I don't know. I never kicked that symptom.
Well, people, had all kinds of different side effects. So, that makes sense.
Yeah. If I reported that, they'd probably, this one guy, this is what he had.
Yeah. Oliver, for a second, they really thought we were talking about turnips, guys.
No, we were not.
I knew it was code. I just didn't know for what. But that's funny because I had it so early in the game that I called. I was like, hey, at, my local doctor's office or whatever, emergency hotline. I think I've the turnip, and they said, are you dying? Can you breathe? And I was like, yeah, I can breathe. Okay, well then don't test. Don't come in because tests are in short supply. And so I never was part of the statistics or anything. And it's remarkable that so many people probably slipped through the cracks just like me. And I got better, and then I went back to work. I was on a gap year between or finishing my gap year, before law school, and so I went back to my quote unquote essential business. It's remarkable that some businesses are not essential and they just don't have a role in the economy, I guess, when things go down. But I went back, and it was a weird time.
So you worked for a year between undergrad and law school?
Yep.
Do you think that was a valuable experience? I think it's probably a good thing for a lot of people to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I worked also during the summers of undergrad, so I probably could have done the whole KJD thing and gone straight through, but I wasn't so pleased with my admissions results the first time around. So the second time I got an offer from Dickinson that I couldn't refuse, and so here I am now.
My father told me once that God's timing is perfect. Isn't that the truth, right? You're
absolutely
at the place where you're supposed to be when you were supposed to be there. For those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So, Oliver, you've got a very bright future in this field, being an attorney in terms of protecting our Second Amendment rights. Do you think that you could have found anything else in life that you'd rather be doing?
Well, I hope my future is bright, and I appreciate that. I'm not sure. At this point, maybe if this wouldn't have worked out, you just get that 0702 FFL and sort of do your thing, somehow be in the industry otherwise, or maybe I would just indulge my other hobbies and try to go be a rock star, play guitar. But I'm perfectly happy with where I'm at. No complaints, and I think that's really the only path in life that I'll be taking.
Are you a musician, Oliver?
A little bit, yeah. I was.
We're gonna have to get him at one of the jam sessions.
Yeah,
Chris.
Yeah.
We got to get him to one of the jam
You got to
sessions.
see Mike on the guitar.
Will you accept the invitation and come perform at one of our jam sessions?
Sure, let's do it. Yeah, I can do guitar or bass.
Oh, that's great. What kind of guitar do you play?
I don't want to say I'm a Fender fanboy, but I have almost exclusively Strats. And then I just have a jazz bass. I started guitar first, and then I wanted to sort of learn, how does bass interact with that, and so I bought a jazz bass. And I have I have a burning passion for two-tone or three-tone sunbursts. So I have the same color scheme, and it's great because you can buy as many as you want, and you sort of obscure how many in the collection you actually do have. So
nice.
It's a good plan.
Great interests, guns and guitars, right?
Yeah.
Gotta round it out with cars. There we go. It's the trifecta.
Just need a cigar after that.
That's right. Let's see if we can get Gilbert on here. He's popping back in again. I hope he wasn't kidnapped. Let's see. Gilbert, are you safe? No. He's been kidnapped. He's muted. Perhaps he's muted himself.
I hope he didn't get
Let's
stuck
see.
in Maryland or Jersey.
Okay, Gilbert has to unmute himself in order for him to get back on here. I think that's what's going on.
Okay.
While you're waiting, Len says he has a Gibson Les Paul Voodoo.
Oh, okay.
Awesome.
Oh, nice. Can't go wrong with a Gibson. Can't go wrong with a Gibson. And
my first guitar was a Squire Bullet Strat, which was like as cheap as you could probably go and still, have something functional. And over time, I sort of replaced every single part on it with, I sort of Fenderized it. And now I call it like a parts caster, where it's higher quality, has really good pickups in it. But the neck is super thin. It's great because it's just that like Indonesian, budget tier, we're going to skimp on the materials. And so it's super lightweight. I love it. It's currently tuned in E flat. And it's just sitting pretty right behind me.
Very cool.
nice.
Should we guess
E flat, man after my own heart.
Can we guess which?
I don't think they had the Bullet
which
Strat
genre?
when I was coming up. I think the Bullet Strat, I don't know when they started making that. I think the Affinity Strat was the only thing they had. That shows how old I am, I think, probably. Yeah. But some of those are great guitars. I played the Affinity Strat. I've not replaced anything on that. I was fortunate enough to have a father who was a musician, played all of the ones in the store, said, this is the one you need to get. Because it's funny. It's not like a gun where you know exactly what you're getting. You can go in and play 10 different of the same guitar, and they will play differently. So I picked out this one, and I played that on a session one time, and the producer couldn't believe what it actually was. He thought it was some kind of 60s Strat or something like that.
That's cool.
I was gonna say we should guess what kind of which genre Oliver likes. Like what?
What kind of music you
is
like?
it? Is it what kind of? I was gonna say it's rock. My guess would be Norse metal.
Norse metal. Hold on. Don't answer. We all got to guess.
Don't
Philly
answer.
Chris.
All right. Let's see. Let me think about this. I don't know. Maybe some regular rock and roll. Maybe a little hard
How about
rock,
people in the audience have to guess?
metal,
People
little
in the
metal,
audience
maybe?
have to guess
Little
what
metal?
kind of. Somebody actually asked what kind of music does the young man
Billy
like?
Chromosome.
Okay.
I'll give a hint. I don't own a single humbucker. It's all single coils.
Oh, okay. So he plays jazz and the blues.
Okay.
So I guess I'll just spoil it. Close with the rock and the jazz and blues, sort of combine it, and I think you get funk, and I think that's where I just have the most fun.
Nice.
Cool.
So naturally, I'm a huge Chili Peppers fan, and I'm a disciple of John Frusciante. So when he came back in 2019, that was just a crazy experience for me. And I recently just saw them with John in September in Philadelphia. So that was a great experience. I think they played Citizens Bank Park. Yeah. So I was right up there in the pit. We got upgraded tickets because of some Ticketmaster fiasco. So it was a great experience.
That's
They
great.
recently had a fiasco again, Ticketmaster.
Yeah, they've had all kinds of problems.
So I heard.
And just FYI, Gilbert says he can see us, but we sound robotic. I think Gilbert's dying to get on the music because I think Gilbert plays guitar too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Gilbert definitely plays guitar.
So we got to try to get him back in. Where's our producer? Hello, Mr. Producer.
Russell.
Gilbert's a
Fighters.
Clapton guy.
Yeah. Under the Bridge is one of my favorite songs.
Oh yeah.
Yes, we played that at one of the jam sessions,
we
didn't we?
did. Yeah. Yes.
And we did have Billy
It's
Crystal.
hard to do it justice because of all the embellishments and all the fun.
Yeah, those
things
guys
that
are
he
good. I
does.
love Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Talk about a bass player. That band has a bass player.
I don't even attempt to slap. I just don't want to get those calluses on my right hand because I want to retain some feeling in my fingertips. So my left hand is just it's gone. It's just calloused beyond belief. And so I really only pick with bass.
We're gonna
Oliver,
play
have you
higher
ever heard of-
ground when you show up. We're gonna play higher ground when you show up.
Oh yeah, that's a classic. That's like 1989.
So here are the answers.
Oh,
Billy
wow.
says progressive rock. Len Larson guessed Fall Out Boy and Guns N' Roses. Then Billy said, "Hope it's not a expletive band like the Red Hot Chili Peppers." This was before you said it. I think they predicted it. And then Rita says, "I was thinking Foo Fighters." And Durso says, "What? No Metallica?"
Yeah, I was gonna say Metallica.
I enjoy a little bit of everything, but I
So
definitely.
here's what we're gonna do, Oliver. Here's what we're gonna do, Oliver. Is I've got a Fender Fat Strat that does have the humbucker. So we'll ease you in, okay? I'll play the SG. You'll play the Fender Fat Strat, and that way we can get some heavy stuff in there along the way. But we got plenty of Chili Peppers we could do as well.
Sure.
And we have a professional keyboardist as well that joins.
Yeah.
Yes. We interrupted you, Oliver.
Sure. I'm big on the pedal game too. I have a board right next to me, so it's not like I shy away from the harder stuff. So I have some capabilities. I got a fuzz factory, so
okay.
This too. So yeah, I do have fun with my heavier tones.
Cool.
There's some of that in I mentioned higher ground. You can't play higher ground without that heavier sound on the guitar.
Yeah, that album was just so heavy metal overproduced. I think the producer for that album, Michael Beinhorn, insisted we're gonna give you the 80s metal sound. That's when John first joined at age 18 or 19, and so he was sort of impressionable and was like, all right, fine, sure, let's do it. So it has a very hard rock-ish sort of sound as a whole that they really haven't sort of matched until maybe One Hot Minute in the mid 90s. I'm a total nerd for this band, if you couldn't tell. So just
well, they had some good guitar players aside from
yeah.
John as well. I mean, that Hillel Slovak can play. Could play.
Yep.
He's he's no longer with us. And Dave could play. Dave Navarro.
And then Dave went on to have a very successful career hosting Ink Master.
Everybody ends up in the right place, right?
Oh yeah.
So I thought Gilbert popped in for just a second over here, and
he texted us that he has 2 to 3 bars of service, but it's not enough for streaming apparently.
Gotcha. We're gonna have to, if we can get him on, we will. If we cannot, then we'll have to bring you guys back on for part 2. How does that sound?
Part 2, ladies and gentlemen.
Sure. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you're thinking about looking forward in terms of, because I think the ATF stuff gets people jammed up all the time because they can tell you that something's perfectly legal and then change their minds, and people might have only heard the one thumbs up, go ahead, this is okay, and missed after the fact that they flip-flopped on the position. Is there anything that you see moving forward aside from, what we've seen with the 80%ers, what we've seen with, and that's not NFA stuff, but when we see the AR pistol braces, is there anything else that's on your radar that you could think of?
Yeah, that's a perfect setup for actually the final thing that I talk about in my piece, which is the whole issue with the bump stocks, and now most recently the forced reset triggers, where you have I'm not going to call them innocuous, but pretty much innocuous products. They're accessories for existing, legal firearms, and they might increase rate of fire on semi-automatic platforms. And so ATF is just going ahead and saying, no, all these products are machine guns themselves. So if you possess a bump stock, that is a machine gun. If you possess a forced reset trigger, apparently that is a machine gun. And so I don't make the argument that machine guns are necessarily in common use. I would argue that short-barreled rifles and suppressors certainly are. Maybe we could talk a little bit more about what my definition of common use even is. But as far as machine guns go, all I say is, look, ATF, very conservatively estimated that there were 500,000 bump stocks on the market. Probably there were more than that. And who knows how many forced reset triggers are, getting cranked out in production right now. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Either these are not machine guns or they are, and there are hundreds of thousands or millions of machine guns out there. And so that doesn't sound very unusual anymore now, does it?
Right.
So that's something I'm keeping an eye out for. I know that many people bought, rare breed FRT 15s and the knockoff versions out there, which you kind of drop in. It's like a cassette style AR trigger upgrade, and if you maintain rearward finger pressure, it'll shoot off, pretty quickly. And so ATF kind of jumped on that, and this time around, not with a rule like they did with Trump and the bump stocks. They sort of just put out an open letter saying, hey, these are machine guns, and too bad. Started seizing customer lists from distributors that they rated. And so it's concerning because, overnight you can go, I thought I bought a product that, I can have fun with at the range or, shoot off my back porch or something. And then the next day you might have a knock at the door saying like, hey, do you have this machine gun on you? And
you're right.
I'm a lawyer and whatnot. And, don't talk to the feds yourself. Just shut up, call a lawyer and there you go.
That's right. Definitely lawyer up and shut up. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for when they go to Staples into the rubber band aisle and find out how many machine guns they've got over there, right? And
shoelaces too, yeah.
Or to the Gap, and they find all these jeans, and they say, "Oh man, look at these loops on here. They got machine guns on them."
Yeah.
Because really, that's what it comes down to. We saw the decision you were saying with the bump stock fairly recently. So we've got a circuit split now where you got two different courts of appeals who have ruled differently. Hopefully the Supreme Court will take it up and settle it once and for all. But it still blows my mind how a court could have gone the other way, because the only way you reach the conclusion that the bump stock is a machine gun is if you make up your own definition in your head that is something along the lines of a machine gun is something that goes bang, 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 bang really fast. That's what a machine gun is. Well, if that's your definition, then but it's still in and of itself doesn't get you there.
If it sounds exactly like one, it must be one, right?
Yeah, it's something that I talk about where going off of the statutory definition, theoretically, you could fire 1 round per minute so long as it's, single function of the trigger, and it could be a machine gun if you just delay that mechanism, long enough. It could be 1 round a minute and technically be a machine gun. So rate of fire does not factor into the definition. Congress, I would argue, was explicit about that in omitting it. They didn't make a mistake there. There was no mistaking it. And so you can't read into it now that, like, popularly some people might say, oh, it shoots so fast, we need to do something about it. And that's the closest way of, sort of regulating it. You can't do that. You need an act of Congress. And so that's why we're seeing, some vindication, at least now, on the bump stock rule, where the Fifth Circuit a couple of days ago came out and said, no, this is, this violates the Administrative Procedure Act. ATF, you cannot do this. It's clearly not a machine gun. And so, yeah, like you said, now we have a circuit split. It's great because the Sixth Circuit came out, I think, at the end of 2021, maybe. And, they sort of reversed themselves and said, no, it's a machine gun. And so now we have something that's hopefully teed up really nicely for the Supreme Court to opine on. And, they could probably just clear it up on like statutory interpretation grounds. They don't have to go into the constitutional question, because there are, doctrines of avoidance. You don't want, judges to be constantly developing constitutional law when you don't have to, and there's an easy way out. So that's probably one way, just saying like, you just don't have statutory authority. It's just clearly an interpretive issue, and that's it.
Yeah, anybody who knows how to read will reach the conclusion that it's not a machine gun. That's all it comes down to. But again, we get put in this position where somebody could have bought a bump stock or one of these force reset triggers at a gun show and end up in one of these situations where it's something that was not regulated at all. It's not even like it's something that with an AR pistol where you're filling out the forms, you're submitting to a background check, and then there's some kind of modification. No, you've got these items that completely unregulated and completely, benign in and of themselves, right? Yep. What are you going to do with a bump stock if you don't have anything to attach it to, for example? But that is somehow a machine gun. And your Christmas card at your office, at Ambler Law Offices,
Oh yeah,
made a joke about that. Do you want to tell everybody about that?
yeah, that was a scene from Die Hard, right? I forget the guy's first name, but it was McClane, right? And
Yeah.
it's one of the best Christmas movies out there, right? And there was that one scene where he sends up in the elevator one of those thugs, and it's written in blood on the guy's shirt. Now I have a machine gun. I looted this guy, and so there we go. Great movie.
And so, but in the Christmas card, you've got Bruce Willis instead of a machine gun. He's holding.
It's an FRT. Yep.
Yeah, force reset trigger.
Unfortunately.
It just shows how ridiculous it is, though, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
What are you going to do with it? I think that some people might take exception with Die Hard being a Christmas movie. I don't know. Liberty, you want to chime in on this? No, she's so irritated.
I've never seen it. Unless I'm confusing it with Speed, with Bullock. I think I'm confused.
No, that's Speed. Yeah, that's Speed.
No.
No, I've never seen it.
It was around Christmas time in the movie, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah. I don't make the rules.
It was a Christmas party. Yeah.
Not sure if that counts, guys.
I don't know.
There might be a circuit split on whether Die Hard's a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going by Christmas parties, then American Psycho has to be one too.
Oh my goodness.
Perfect. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Then that's my new favorite Christmas movie.
Well, that will be on your guys' Christmas card next year. You guys are going to
There you go.
American Psycho.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we want to talk a little bit about like the whole common use kind of standard or whatever that might be. But it's I won't go so far as to say I'm proposing a rule that I want people to adopt, because maybe it should get figured out and among the courts. But I can tell you what it shouldn't be. And I don't think you should be relying on numbers. Some people might say, well, let's use some kind of objective metric of like what is common use. Like, do 1 million gun owners have to have something or what? And a big part of my argument there is that you're never going to have accurate enough numbers to be able to base a decision off of that. And that's actually partly due to the Firearms Owners Protection Act, where you cannot form a registry, right? There's that prohibition that got codified somewhere in 18 USC 900s, where the federal government cannot form a registry and learn what gun owners own outside of the NFA. The NFA is exempted, obviously, because the NFA is the NFA. But you're never going to have official government data, and so what you're relying on then is polling and statistical research to say, oh, it looks like 54% of gun owners have a shotgun or something like that. And like, are you really going to be basing these important decisions off of that kind of subset polling research? And I don't think that's reliable at all. And so what I would suggest is common use really is just ready availability. That's probably the spirit of what the Miller court and the Heller court, they reeled Miller back in a little bit, but that's probably what they were getting at, which is if you have something readily available on the market for you to buy, it's exactly what then you can then bear in self-defense, for the common defense, for whatever lawful purpose. So you don't have to go through the whole analysis of, there's 2.6 million suppressors. Are they readily available? Can you buy one on the market right now? And yeah, you have to jump through some hoops, pay $200, get your prints, but they're accessible, they're on the market, you can buy them. And so these are then things that people show up to ranges with, they defend their homes with. And I think that's probably the more workable way of going about a common use analysis. And then you might say, okay, well, everything's readily available, so does that mean everything is protected? Yeah, that's the point. Yeah, Second Amendment protects all bearable arms, with the exception maybe of machine guns. You can make the argument that, under the current lay of the land with the Hughes Amendment, 922.0 prohibiting civilian registrations after 1986 of new machine guns, you could say that, okay, well, those are not readily available on the market for lawful acquisition. So, maybe not. And I think, honestly, that would probably take an act of Congress to rectify. I don't see the courts going so far as to say that.
That's interesting, though, because when you think about common use at the time, the government can really leave the citizens in the Stone Age by preventing things from becoming in common use at the time, which is the problem that I see with that standard altogether. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If the executive agency of your choosing or Congress can step in and say, hey, we're just going to, it's brand new technology. It's not, it hasn't proliferated yet, but we're going to nip it right in the bud. And, you'll never have the opportunity to, become commonly used. And that's sort of what happened, I think, with, some of these NFA items where the prohibition starts in the, 30s. And so you have these decades, almost 100 years now of this artificial restriction where, probably short-barreled rifles, shotguns, because 16 and 18 inches of barrel length is completely arbitrary. They probably would have proliferated, otherwise. Any other weapons, pen guns, not as useful as a handgun. You can conceal a handgun easily. So these things would have kind of, worked their way into, everyone's arsenals. But despite that, now that we have inflation, sort of thankfully, $200 is much more affordable than it was in 1934. And so, people don't seem to be too afraid of the potential penalties of, accidental noncompliance. They're willing to subject themselves to the registry and the interstate travel requirements where you got to get permission for, your SBRs and whatnot. So it's becoming ubiquitous to the point where, so many people have them. They're readily available, and in my book, ready availability would have to be the benchmark for measuring it, because just numerical approaches won't be reliable.
Now, I imagine that you do have friends who are on board with the NFA, not on board with the NFA, but who enjoy NFA items, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Have you run into anybody in the gun community, in your experience, who does shy away and wants no part of it just because of that sheer, fear of potentially? Well, the first thing is that, like you said, a lot of people decide, I don't want to be on some list. I don't want my fingerprints in there. It's an invasion of privacy and things of that nature. But have you run into people who were scared of running afoul of the law with these things?
Yeah, for sure. And I think Gilbert was one of them until we sort of peer pressured him into, partaking. But there's definitely a perception that, well, there's also, actually, maybe it's worth noting, there are some really common myths out there, sort of FUD lore, if you will, where, if you join the NFA registry, you lose your Fourth Amendment rights. The feds can come to your house.
I've heard that. Somebody at a gun show asked me that one time.
Yeah.
They're like, I heard that it's true that if you get a tax stamp, then you've forfeited your right against unreasonable searches and seizures. So where the hell did you hear that?
The only way that's happening is if you invite them into your house or they have a warrant. And if they have a warrant, you got other problems. But
they might be getting it confused, though, with if you have a federal firearms license, then you're subject to, your premises are subject to inspection. That might be what they're confusing it with. But
a tax stamp is not an FFL. It's simply evidence that you paid your tax, and so then you're not a felon for possessing what you're possessing your property fundamentally. But there are some people out there that have some reservations, and then they sort of dissipate when they realize how much of a quality of life improvement it is shooting suppressed, and oh sweet, I don't have to bang my barrel on the door frame when I'm sort of LARPing in my basement, clearing rooms and stuff and having fun. So SBRs are kind of cool, and maybe short barrel shotguns have some interesting uses and certain maybe hunting contexts, and who knows. But it's you can, I feel like you can get most people on board, and especially when you tell them how much of their privacy they've given up already. Maybe that's not a great argument, because you should value your privacy, but at least I'm of the opinion that if you can access arms that are effective at self-defense, maybe in the home or in a close quarters environment, or whatever circumstance you can imagine where you might want to defend yourself, if you can have access to superior arms for certain contexts, why deprive yourself of that? Everyone has a different sort of calculation there, but I think I'm going to give myself every unfair advantage possible. If God forbid I ever have to defend myself, I would probably want to have the upper hand. And so, why not spend a little bit of money and get yourself pretty well off?
Shooting suppressed is a different experience. Chris and I went to this event one time, and It's just a different ball. It's a more social experience, I think.
Oh yeah,
When
yeah.
you're shooting suppressed, as opposed to being out there for an hour or 2 hours and nobody's talking to each other. And when you try to say one thing, like what? Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have to wear earbuds when you do silencers?
It depends. It totally depends on the caliber. There are some suppressed systems that are hearing safe. And so a good example of that would be like 22 long rifle out of a pistol, where you're not getting enough velocity to get that supersonic crack. So throw a can on, I'm just going to say can, colloquially as a silencer suppressor, throw a can onto like a suppressed, or throw a can onto a 22, pistol, and you're getting decibel readings that are so low that you could very easily go without hearing protection. And the same thing is for some like, 30 cal rifle cans, for example, where, maybe 300 blackout or subsonic 7.62 by 39, stuff like that. It's more of like specialty, or even like the heavier weights of 9mm or 45 ACP. There definitely are calibers out there that are very quiet when suppressed. But the trade-off is that, in terms of terminal ballistics, they might not be as effective as like a rifle round, because a big part of that is velocity. And, like 5.56, for example, like any AR-15, just typical 223, 5.56, that's going to be 3,000 feet per second. You are never going to be hearing safe with that. And so in those contexts, the suppressor will really just be, softening the blow a little bit and might make it tolerable for you to put a, couple rounds on target without blowing your eardrums out. But it's really just more for obscuring where you're shooting from, probably, and hiding flash than really chasing the decibels.
Okay.
Yeah. Always make sure to wear your eyes, though. Public service announcement: wear your eyes. Don't forget. So I've seen that happens sometimes, where people are shooting suppressed and they're like, "Oh, I don't got to wear the ears," and like, don't forget your eyes, though. It doesn't help with that.
Yeah, imagine cramming a 300 blackout down a 5.56 barrel. That's why you want eyes.
Dag Nabbit says, when I first wanted to buy a silencer, I was told what I had to go through and said, never mind. So,
yeah, I mean, it's definitely more paperwork than just a typical transfer, at your FFL, and it's a significant weight too. You really just, you want to do it and then forget about it for about 9 months, and then you'll be pleasantly surprised when you can come, go to your gun store and pick something up. But it's if you find a good gun store who'll do the transfer paperwork with you, it's really pretty seamless.
They even have kiosks at some of these places where you can do the fingerprints and photographs, right?
Yep.
So.
And that's actually, I think, recently Form 1. So your applications to make NFA items, I think you can now do electronic fingerprints for those as well. So everything's getting a little bit more streamlined. Maybe
back in my day, if you did it as an individual, back in my day, as you did as an individual, you had to get permission from the chief law enforcement officer in your jurisdiction. Yeah. Do you know about that? Or is that before your time?
Yeah. What year did they change that?
It was the Obama administration.
Right.
They were like fixing the trust loophole. The way they always make up this stuff. It's such a huge problem, right? Because you had all these NFA trusts that were causing issues. Philly Chris, you got any final questions for Oliver?
When you coming back on, man?
Hey, anytime I'm invited. This is a great time.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, we do have to get you back on with Gilbert at some time when he could actually sit down in front of the camera and everything.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You got to check out Oliver's article. We posted it in the chat. We will post it as well. I'm going to post it again here in case people, because there have been so many comments, in case it got lost for people. I'm going to go ahead and post it again here. We'll put it in the description on the YouTube video. What's it called, Oliver?
Long title, but Dangerous and Unusual, How an Expanding National Firearms Act Will Spell Its Own Demise.
Dangerous and Unusual.
Awesome. Thanks for what you're doing out there, Oliver.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much. And you guys are doing a great job too.
Oh, thanks.
And you forgot to tell Oliver about the comment from Scott that says, I want Oliver for Chief Supreme Court Justice.
Oh, there we go. I'll post it right on there on the screen.
Beautiful.
We'll put it on the screen. So this is Oliver. He's available for Supreme Court nominations starting
soon.
starting soon. Starting soon. Well, we'll talk to you before you sit for the bar and everything. But thanks so much for joining us, Oliver.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Cheers.
Thank you.
So, Chris, I need you to take over for just 1 minute. We got a lot to talk about, catching up to do over the last few weeks. Why don't you kick it off? I'll let you take it away. Okay.
Sounds good. We'll see you soon, brother. Okay. How you doing, Liberty?
There he is, the big guy.
Hey now. So, anyway, we'll wait for Mike to get back there. But interesting stuff going on in the news. I did make a few notes. I find it pretty interesting what's going on with this stuff regarding Biden having all of these classified documents. I'm sure you guys have heard about that, right?
Yeah, did that just come out today, or was that yesterday?
I guess this week. There's I think I've heard there's a second situation now. I guess the first one, if I'm remembering this correctly, is down here in Philly, actually down at Penn, where some highly classified documents were found. I think at first he said like a drawer, but then he said something about a closet. And I did a little bit of research about that regarding what was going on. And, it was when he was vice president, I believe, and they're classified at a level that he should have not had those in his possession at all. So we'll have to see what happens with this whole situation. But I believe they're the classification that warrants those documents only being reviewed in a SCIF, which is a very controlled environment. I know for a fact that the Secret Service sometimes will set those up on the road when the president is mobile, and they'll be like tents with like white noise, and they can only be viewed within that environment. They're not supposed to leave that environment, I guess, unless they're sealed up again and transported properly. So funny to hear this being talked about in the media, especially with what happened with Trump and when they raided Mar-a-Lago. Yeah, and he's claiming, that he declassified those documents, and he had the authority, of course, as the president, where these documents should not have been in the possession, Biden's possession at all, as a vice president. And apparently, from what's being reported, some of them had to do with Ukraine. So it's interesting, the whole Hunter and Biden Ukraine thing going on there.
Wow.
So yeah, so things are coming full circle. I don't know how they'll get around that one, but I think it's fascinating that this is happening. And of course, there's clips being played of Biden when he was referring to Trump doing that, and how bad it was, and he should be held accountable. Everybody should be held accountable. Even the president should be held accountable in that situation. Everybody's accountable to the law. So here we have him in an even worse situation. So whether or not anything will come of it, I highly doubt it. We'll see.
Chris, was it you who predicted that would cause some kind of impeachment of Biden? Who predicted? Somebody recently told me that.
We talked about some stuff on the show before, and I don't know. I'm wondering if maybe this is some sort of setup too, because he really shouldn't have had possession of those. So the question is, how'd they get there? Who put them there? But I find it troubling that
I know a guy. I know.
Yeah, right.
No. I know a guy who's listening right now who said, a few months ago, he said before the midterm elections, he said, wait till after the midterms. I'm predicting he'll be out by March. They're going to find the left is going to find a way to get rid of him.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to say.
They want him out.
Right.
They don't want him in, and they're going to find a way to do it. It'll happen after the midterms. And I think the thing is that there's going to be so many people on the right who, if there is an impeachment here, they're going to say, see, it was so bad that not even the Democrats could get, they could wiggle their way out of it. Not even the Democrats could let him go on this one. Meanwhile, it's exactly what they want. So what do you think about that, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I was going with it. I feel like, that's a highly likely possibility, and maybe they're done with him. There's a lot of things surfacing in the news recently, and I noticed the left-wing media is actually being a little bit more critical of him than they have in the past. They're trying to defend this to some degree, but they're also playing those clips of him, holding Trump accountable for what happened at Mar-a-Lago. So, but, as Denise points out in the comments, Justice Department will oversee it. So, whether or not anything will really come of it, if it were you or I, or, especially if it was Russ, for example. Yeah.
Didn't Merrick Garland announce special counsel today?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so.
So they don't interact with. They don't. I don't believe they interact with the DOJ. I think they're subject to the DOJ's policies and procedures, their rules and everything. But I don't think that there's any direct interaction to prevent. Well, I'm saying this like this is the way it always works.
Yeah, the way it's supposed to be, right?
I'm talking about the way it's supposed to be. In theory, on paper, this is the way it happens.
Yeah, right.
But it's entirely possible they want him out.
It could be. Maybe they're going to use him as a scapegoat at this point, and we'll get to see Kamala as the first president. Who knows? The first female president. Which would be I don't know, equally bad, I guess.
What do you think about what's going on with the Republican House right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's definitely, a lot going on with that. And what specifically, did you have something specific in mind, or just
with the whole debacle with McCarthy ultimately becoming the speaker?
Oh yeah.
And there was this fight that lasted for quite some time. And then he announces that their first bill is going to be remove the funding for the 87,000 IRS agents.
Yeah, I did see that. I mean, it looks like he has some good things on his agenda, if you will. And that's crazy. That whole thing is nuts. Between them announcing they were going to go after people like, selling stuff on eBay for over $600 and 87,000 agents, and they're being trained in the use of deadly force. As you talk about in your seminars, you're not allowed to use deadly force to defend property and so forth. So, it's interesting how they kind of reverse the standard there when it's a, regular citizen who might owe some money to the government. And you got all these
I'm curious. I never got to take a look at this, but I was curious as to whether that's standard for all agents, federal agents.
It's a good question. Yeah, maybe probably some sort of training, but the way
I can't imagine that anybody was ever mad enough at an IRS person to unlawfully try to do them harm where the IRS agent had to lawfully defend themselves. I can't imagine.
No, never. Right. Never. Yeah.
So I don't know. If I were an IRS agent, I'd probably want to be pretty proficient on using deadly force and self-defense. Just saying.
Yeah. I suppose you make a good point. Yeah.
And there's some wacky people out there.
There are. Lots of wacky people, that's for sure.
There are.
Yeah.
So with the next thing they were claiming is, I think there was a bill that was put out there to repeal. What was it, to get rid of income tax and abolish the IRS?
Yeah, like the flat tax thing again.
And add something. Yeah, that's something along the lines of a VAT tax. Do you want to explain? Do you know anything about that stuff or no?
I don't know a ton about it, but remembering back when they were discussing that, a few years before, and in some ways, I do like the idea of that. I mean, the IRS regulations and the codes are really insane.
Well, it wouldn't have been a flat tax; it'd be a VAT tax. So it's basically, from what I understand, it would be sort of like a sales tax that's built in on.
Like a consumption tax,
it's a consumption
tax.
Yeah, right. Yeah, a consumption tax.
Yeah.
Now the problem is that that's going to hit poor people a lot harder. It just is, right?
Yeah, that's true. Sure.
Because they're going to have to pay extra for basic necessities. That I don't know. I think that when you have certain things that have to be built into the budget. And I'm not saying, I don't know what's right or wrong in terms of how you can fairly implement a tax. But that's the way I see it. I don't know. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it's such a mess right now. I was looking at some stuff the other day, and it's insane what's going on right now with the dollar and the all the printing, the quantitative easing, which has continued, especially throughout the pandemic, and what's going on with the banks right now, and the dollar losing its world reserve status. Russia and other countries are now trading oil off of the dollar, so I don't see any way around us entering into some Great Depression in the coming years. In the short term, I think we're going to see a continued dramatic increase in inflation, the food supply stuff that's going on. So I think we're in big trouble, man. I've been saying this stuff for a while, but I think we're on the precipice.
Yeah, I'm going to flip this. We're going to play a game.
Okay,
So
let's do it.
I want you to name, how long have you been a part of the program?
It's probably a few years now, right? Got to be at least.
I think we're coming up on
maybe
20 to 21, 21 to 22, 22 to 23, because you started in, I think, February of 20.
February. Okay. So
it's
if my math is right, like 83 years or something. 83.
Yeah. We're coming up on 3 years. So
wow, how about that?
It's been 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to name 3 predictions that you made that have come true. Name 3 predictions you made on the show that subsequently have come true. All right. Do you think you could think of them? Do you need some time to think? Should I converse with? Should I converse with? I don't know. If I was somebody making predictions that were coming true, I'd have them ready to roll. I'd be like, all right, here you go, guys. This is how great I am.
Here, yeah. Well, let's see. I think that something that's in the news right now that I talked about early on and did some analysis on my own was the stuff going on in the the Bears database. So especially in the past few weeks, that's something that's more recent, but the CDC and other agencies are now admitting that I want to be careful with my wording here just because of the craziness we've encountered here on the old YouTube. But they can't really deny the adverse events and the number of people who have been. Yeah, exactly. So
there's zucchini problems that are being admitted now that were previously denied.
Yes, correct.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So there are definitely zucchini problems. I think people are having a harder time with a straight face saying that there's no zucchini problems. I don't know.
Right?
And it's horrible. To what degree? I don't know. I don't have a statistic for you or anything. But my sense is that the general population is more open to, or more in a position that they can no longer deny.
You can't deny it. In all these videos you're seeing, it's horrifying. I have kids and seeing all these youths that are, dying on the field in sporting events. And I don't ever remember a time when I was younger seeing that type of stuff and all the people who are literally collapsing, fainting and or completely expiring on live TV. And the numbers on that.
You didn't see the article recently?
Which one?
An article said that that's because of climate change.
Oh, I do apologize.
The sudden adult, they're calling it now sudden adult death syndrome, is because of climate change.
Yeah, that's right. You did mention that, and I appreciate you following up on that.
They said there's a certain temperature at which the human body will have people who drop dead, and sudden deaths will take place. And then I remembered how every year in Arizona, the entire population dies suddenly. I forgot about that.
That's funny. I took a screenshot. I don't know if you could see it on my. You probably can't, but of all these headlines in the news, heart attack. Does skipping breakfast increase your risk? Lonely older women at greater risk of heart attack. Study shows. Heart attack, the drink that could trigger a sudden cardiac arrest, catastrophe. I think they were talking about if you drink tea or something. Oh, physical activity may increase heart attack risk. Do you live under a flight path? You may be at risk of a heart attack. Study find rate 70% higher. So now there's all these studies, so-called studies, who's funding these studies. Falling asleep with the TV on could bring early death, apparently.
Oh, wow.
So, all these articles. It's just crazy. I mean, I think, our audience knows my feelings on a lot of this stuff. I think it's more by design than it's not. I did notice a second ago, Denise mentioned the alien thing in the comments, UFOs, quote unquote. I have never said specifically that on the air. I think that, they're definitely aliens for sure, but I thought I was pretty early on that, I think a few years ago, talking about that. And then all of a sudden it was acknowledged by the government that they are tracking these craft that are, So before even Tucker mentioned it. So, I think these things are all connected. I don't think there's as many coincidences as some people would like to claim. And I think that's going to be another thing we'll see in the coming months and years. It's going to be a much bigger topic on the mainstream media, and we'll see where that goes. But these craft that are traveling hundreds of miles an hour underwater and then leaving the water and, going into the atmosphere and then space, they're classifying it now as transmedium, these gravitational craft. And there's fighter pilots who have come out now that literally say they see these things every day in their training exercises. So, there's a lot to that. There's something to it, something going on.
What do you think it is?
I don't, at this point, I guess, maybe I will say on the air, I don't think that we're necessarily alone. I'm not going to say it's aliens, but there's someone in possession of craft that are capable of things that are not explained in our understanding of physics that, that we were taught in school. So I think there's entities, beings,
Why wouldn't
on
it
the
be
planet.
Something like the government or,
well, that's part of it.
Who have
Yeah,
access to stuff that they've been keeping under wraps.
That's definitely part of it.
I would be curious as to why, though, if you had technology that would be at that next level, why you wouldn't try to make money on it.
Well, the problem is with that, it's such a leap in technology, and I think I mentioned this a little bit on the show. Here's my personal opinion on it, and the opinion of some other individuals that I listen to regarding this topic, is that, if you look at our economy, let's just look at the oil industry, for example. There's been so many decades where we've used oil and natural gas and, carbon-based fuels to move around and to propel vehicles and spacecraft and things of that nature. And, this technology has most likely been around for 40, 50 years. And if you just suddenly cut off that whole oil industry, the revenue stream from that would have gone away. So if you delay the technology, you get to extinguish the revenue generation of the older fossil fuels and engines and all the different progressions.
So it's to milk that particular
that's a good
thing,
way to put
and
it.
then
Exactly right.
Once that's dry, you go on to the next.
Yeah, and now it's
is the next going to be electric?
Yeah, and that's where we're headed. That's what I was just going to say. And if you look at the push right now,
but they really don't need it because it's not any better for the. I can't say that. How much better can it be if you've got? There's still problems there, right? With the batteries, there are problems with the fact that when you're using electricity, it doesn't come from the wall. It comes from a plant that might be burning coal or natural gas.
Yeah,
right?
it's really just the same thing in a different channel. The batteries themselves, the production of the batteries. I think we might have talked maybe a few weeks ago on the show about this, or maybe off the air. I forget about the slave labor essentially over in the other side of the planet there, where they're digging in the ground and getting the cobalt that's used in the lithium ion batteries, and the destruction of the earth, and then you literally have to melt rock to get those minerals out of there, and then those batteries go into usage, and then once they're done, what are we going to do with all the raw materials that are in those batteries? Because that's not something you can just very easily dump in a landfill without having an environmental issue. So to call it zero emissions is basically a lie.
I hate to go back to the bag laws, but I read an article the other day because you were telling me that there's an ordinance in where was it? Was it Haverford Township?
Yeah, I think it is Haverford Township. Yeah, right over
and where they banned plastic bags,
right?
For businesses, and so
you
now
have
you
to
got these
buy
businesses.
Bags, yeah.
Now you have these businesses who purchased a number of bags already, and they got these stacks and stacks of plastic bags.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I know several businesses who have them, and then
the government wants them to just throw them away. You must throw them away. No. We don't want the other people throwing them away. You and only you can throw them away because
without any
better. It's much better for the environment if you throw them away, and they get no use whatsoever.
Don't use them at all. Yeah, just throw them in the trash. Make sure they end up right.
Waste them, and you throw them away because the environment won't recognize it if you throw it away. They'll only recognize it if your customers throw them away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's all.
And how many people? You and I were talking about this off the air the other day. How many people buy these so-called reusable bags and end up never reusing them.
Well,
And
that's the thing is that I read another article that says you got to use them like 12 or something times before they actually become a benefit to the environment, because they take energy to produce, right? The energy and materials that are used to produce them outweighs the impact unless you use them so many times.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, there's an opportunity.
There was an article about
there.
this. And the problem is that I don't know how many people use all the reusable bags 12 times. I know I got a pile of them in my back seat. I was just in vitamin shop the other day. They asked me again, you want a bag for 50 cents? Go ahead. I still haven't told them that we talk about them on the air. One day I'll walk in and they'll ask me, I'll just play the entire segment.
There you go. Right. You have to.
I told the cashier, it was like, I got like 12 or 15 of these things sitting in my back seat right now. She's like, do you want to go get one? No.
Really? Don't want to run all the way back to my car.
No,
all the
thank you.
Stuff here. Yeah.
I'll pay the 50 cents.
Right.
I can actually say, I don't know if I'm proud of it, but I've literally never used a reusable bag at a store. Like I use them for like Christmas stuff. You know what I mean? Like to travel with Christmas presents, but I've never brought them back to the store ever.
At least you're reusing them, but yeah, I mean, not a lot of people do. And I mean, I have good intentions sometimes, but I always seem to forget them.
Do you ever reuse plastic, the plastic bags though?
I reuse those
I've reused those my entire life.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh yeah, I use them at home all the time. Yeah. I'll use them as trash bags in the smaller, trash bins.
Exactly.
Or, sometimes when I travel, I'll use one in my suitcase to put dirty clothes into. Like
those are perfect for that.
Yeah. If the hotel room doesn't have
those as a lunchbox since I was 5 years old.
Yeah, well, that's a good purpose for them too. Yeah, they tie up nice.
There's actually a thing like old folks and people alike just stuff so many of those in their cabinets, and like cleaners and whatnot go to houses and they find so many. They're like, throw away your plastic bags. I mean, people keep those plastic bags.
They do, yeah.
So
I've used them for my bees sometimes for bags.
A bag of bees.
Cobra in a bag.
I use them for my mongoose. Mongoose in a plastic bag. That's great.
Could be a Seinfeld episode.
You need to make some predictions, brother. I think you predicted some stuff on the show too.
Well, I think Russ brought up one of my failures.
Which one was that? I think
when I said that we had that whole Mario Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo, when he got in trouble when I was insistent. It was actually funny. We were having a good time. Where I kept saying that he was not going to get in trouble and nothing was going to happen to him.
Right.
He ended up having to resign, I guess. So.
That's right. Yeah. I still think Trump will be the next president.
You still think Trump will be the next president?
I think so.
You think Hillary will be the running mate? Not the running mate.
It's highly likely.
The opponent.
Yeah.
You think
right?
So?
Correct. Yeah, as running mate, that'd be amazing. Could you imagine?
The Trump Hillary ticket.
Yeah, that would be great. And I just noticed too, they're going after natural gas now. There's this whole new study that was recently released that now apparently natural gas is going to be, they're going to go after that. They're saying it's harmful
the gas
to have
stoves.
in your home.
You heard about the
gas stoves and gas fireplace.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like when you stand back and look at this stuff and you look at what the result is. It's like, come on, how many years have we been using natural gas? It's one of the cleanest burning fuels we have. We have a lot of it in the U.S. And they're just, the left is pushing us off of all of these fossil fuels to the whole, electric New Deal. And we've seen already major failures with that. The power grid has gone down several times in California and other places. They're making regulations about when you can charge your electric cars. So, go buy an electric car, but good luck getting to work with it, So it's just wacky, pretty wacky stuff going on. So. But, I'm seeing some more things about the dollar. I really think in the next few years, we're going to see a complete collapse of the dollar. And they're going to go to this Fed coin.
What does the dollar look like?
I think it'll be like what they did, I believe it was in 71 when they took us off the gold standard and you had to turn in your silver notes and the original notes. They give you a date and they say you have to turn these in and then they reissue a new currency. But in this case, they'll go to a digital currency. I mean, they're gearing people up for it. There's all these new Whole Foods and these Amazon stores, owned by Amazon. You have to go in and you need a QR code even to go in the store on your phone. So they're getting people ready, the psychological programming, if you will, the conditioning, the change shortage.
Is that true over here?
Not yet, but if you look at the areas where they have more control over, doing that type of thing, it's already really happening. And at some point, you may wake up and on the, mainstream media, probably on both sides, will be like, hey, there's going to be a cutoff date for paper money, and it's going to be a Fed coin, digital currency. You'll have to have some sort of electronic device like your phone, and then they can do all kinds of things with that they can't do with, paper money. They can say, hey, Mike, you've got, $100,000 in your account, and if you don't use 10% of it by, the end of the year, then you lose it, and then you can't really save the same way. So you're devaluing the currency that way.
And then you could get into all kinds of things with a social credit score, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I was going to mention. Yep. Social credit score. You're apparently you're eating too much meat. So you're going to have to pay a carbon. They're talking about integrating the carbon credit stuff into that. So if you like, to have a nice steak every now and then, which I know you do, either you'll have to pay a premium for that, or they'll say you can only buy so much of it. I mean, that's where we're headed, in my opinion. I see that as the future. I don't see any way around it at this point. The banks have literally been, I was just researching something the other day, I have some years of experience in financial services, and we've seen, banking crises in the past. I think we're on the verge of another one. The banks have been actually allowed, I didn't know about this till recently, allowed to loan out additional money based on how much they've invested in solar. And the solar is proving not to be as reliable as it was. So now you have over-leveraged banks based on solar. And when that collapses, then all these loans, are going to come due, and we're going to see a major problem with the banking. They'll probably get rescued again by the Federal Reserve, or there'll be a crisis. That could be part of it. And then they'll say, for the stability of the U.S. and, the government and the U.S.
So
dollar,
what happens
we're going to have
if you have money in a bank and it fails and they don't get bailed out?
Yeah, that can be a real problem. You lose your money. I mean, there's FDIC insurance, but I don't think it covers all of your money. And I think that's more for like theft stuff. I don't know all the rules on that, to be honest with you. But at this point, the system, I mean, look at what we're seeing with a lot of the. That
brings me back to the debates in the 2016 primary when you had John Kasich on the stage. And I think Ted Cruz said he wouldn't have bailed out the banks. And Kasich was like, that's ridiculous. You got all these regular people who'd be affected by it. And, you'd have to figure out a way to get some of these people their money back. And Ted Cruz is like, well, how do you figure out who you're going to give the money back to? Because there's not enough, obviously.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I'd try to figure out who could afford it. And the crowd just instantaneously in unison,
yeah, well, what's going on now with these?
He immediately regretted that decision to say that out loud. I would just be a socialist and choose who needed it more, and the other people, sorry for your luck.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on with the dollar that concern me, and the Federal Reserve's not part of the government. We talked about that. They have no interest in the citizens of this country, and there's similar entities all around the globe that manipulate and control the currency. So, and China and Saudi Arabia and a lot of big countries, over the past few years have gotten oil with the dollar, which is, the OPEC dollar, as we've talked about before in the program. So I think we're on the verge. I don't know exactly when, but it could be next 6 months, next year, next couple of years, we're going to see something major happen with that, in my opinion. And I think we're going to enter into another Great Depression, especially with the food prices and everything going up. People have their credit cards maxed out right now buying food.
My buddy keeps sending me this stuff about eggs, saying that in California, there's like no eggs, and
they're like $8 per dozen right now. I think I just heard today. Yeah. Actually, if people got chickens, there's some other countries that did this where they gave out chickens, like free chickens, to like 30% of the population, and basically you had free protein, and also reduced what went to the landfill because people would feed their food scraps from dinner and stuff to the chickens. So there's a lot of benefits to that.
I think it's about to get worse, because I just saw an article that like 50 million chickens have died from some kind of flu.
Of course they have.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Well, that's there are
you know,
certainly people speculating that that's on purpose to create a
sure.
shortage, but
Yeah, how many of those food plants have burned down in the past few years? You don't really see a lot about this on the media. It's out there. Um, yeah, I think we're unfortunately, society and civilizations around the globe are going through a reset, maybe the Great Reset.
mm.
So
Is that part of your prediction?
yes, it is.
That there's going to be a great reset?
Great Reset.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean these guys talk about it. Klaus Schwab, others,
Klaus
they
Nomi?
openly talk about it.
Klaus Nomi keeps talking about
Yeah,
it.
right. Yeah.
If you don't know who Klaus Nomi is, you have to Google Klaus Nomi.
And the unfortunate part, people are busy. People have families. People have careers. And they don't have the time to spend studying the stuff, and they don't teach it in school. So there's maybe a reason for that as well. By design, my friends.
Liberty, what do you have to say about Klaus Nomi?
You don't know me.
You don't.
You don't know me.
Sing it, Liberty. So, what do you think is going to happen? What's your prediction there, Michael? You have any predictions for us?
I want to hear Liberty's prediction.
All right. Go ahead.
Geez. Prediction just in general?
Yeah. Do you have any predictions?
I think that there's something to it. My prediction is that China wanted this all along. I always go back to China. I mean, I agree with Trump on that. The China virus from Wuhan, I think it was a bioweapon, and I think that it was the first turnip. The first go of it was really bad, and everybody was saying it's nothing but as viruses it calmed down, and now it's not that big of a deal, but it was at first. I mean, the reason I was saying that was because
here's my thing on that, and I'm sorry if I interrupted you at all,
sorry.
but I think it's along the same lines. Is that they've done such if this was an intentional attack or whatever, they have done such a good job at getting half of the country on one side to say the turnip is no big deal, right? The turnip is no big deal, and therefore it's not something we should be concerned about. And the other side to be terrified of the turnip, and as a result, get every single zucchini possible.
Right.
And if it wasn't an intentional situation, they effectively destroyed everybody, and nobody's the wiser. Too busy fighting with each other over it.
Yeah.
Nobody. I don't think either side is 100% right. For some reason, it's become a left or right thing. I don't think any of them are 100% correct about it. And meanwhile, we're all getting. I'm trying not to use curse words right now, but you know what I'm saying,
just throw it out there. We're in the rogue hour.
And meanwhile, we're all getting jammed up, and we're too busy pointing fingers at each other about which one is wrong.
Yeah.
To realize the true culprit. I don't know.
Which I think I've used the analogy before in the show about the fish tank analogy I often use when I'm talking to friends and other people. And they basically have us in. Look at it. Let's say there's a big mansion and there's a nice living room and there's a fish tank in there. We're in that fish tank. We're kind of stuck in that fish tank, and the elites are outside of it. They get to enjoy the living room. They get to go to the home theater in the basement. They go out to the garage and they drive their fancy cars around. And we're kind of stuck in that fish tank.
Do they have a cigar room?
Oh, they have everything. They have everything. They go to Mars for that. They get in their TR-3B with the gravitational propulsion craft, which creates a plasma field, and take off and head up to Mars. Anyway.
Wow.
Interesting.
I've got a question. Do you have any New Year's resolutions, Philly Chris? And anybody in the audience, any of our listeners who have New Year's resolutions, write them in the comments.
New Year's resolutions.
You thinking about it, Chris?
Yeah, I've been thinking about trying to get back into some more physical fitness stuff. I was doing a little bit more during the pandemic, getting out hiking and been pretty busy lately, which is a good thing. But that's kind of my New Year's resolution, is to get back to that type of activity a bit more. So
Great.
go with that. Yeah. How
How about you, Liberty? What's your New Year's resolution?
I had one, and I don't remember what it is. To remember more things. No, I think it was to work on. Well, I guess I'm just naturally doing it already, is like the situational awareness more, even though I was already super aware, to be more aware and think of more of like think ahead more, and I've really been using it
Let's see that.
more because I have like patterns in my day, and I've been really, really just even more focusing on that to like be more preventative rather than more fearful. Does that make sense?
No. Try again.
to be more preventative rather than fearful. I don't know. I guess they kind of go hand in
Preventative.
hand. And-
like self-defense wise?
Yeah.
Oh, good for you.
Okay, that's
Well,
good. That's good.
yeah, because I think mine usually comes from fear, but I think have some tools in my toolbox now where it's like I can be a little bit more to be a little bit
Pennsylvania
more.
repealed the knife laws, and Liberty's like, go time.
Yeah, and it's worked. I mean, it's I think I had a situation today where I was overly situational aware, which I'll explain another time. It was kind of funny, but I think
We
yeah,
can't see it, Chris.
Yeah, it's not working.
but I think that's more of mine.
Dag Nabbit says, buy more guns. I like that resolution.
Dagnabbit.
It's an excellent resolution.
Yes, it is.
Anybody else? Who else has a New Year's resolution? I will say this, that to some degree, I don't like New Year's resolutions if people are using it as a crutch or an excuse to wait until the new year, or only during the time of the new year make major changes in your life that will make your life better or make you better. I think that if you identify something where you do need to change, do it today, whether it's January or June. Just do it.
Yeah.
You don't need to have a New Year's resolution now. If this provides the opportunity for you to be honest with yourself and identify something in your life that does need to change and put it into action, then great.
Wonder if
Don't wait for the new year just to do that.
Wonder if like New Year's resolution was created by like a marketing team somewhere, because it sells a lot of things. It sells a lot of gym
certain
members.
particular industries. Yeah. Definitely the fitness industry and weight loss industry, right?
I'm going to ask OpenAI who created it.
Ask OpenAI who created.
Yeah, just brought it up. We talked about OpenAI a little bit.
Mike, I wanted to say that back to my prediction. I was leading towards the China thing, but then the second thing is that I think after reading, I told Billy Chris this the other day, after reading Joe Rogan's recent post, he was explaining this post about like how somebody born in 1920s, I think it was, they've gone through so many things in their era, wars and depression and all these different things, but yet they survived. And I said to Philly Chris, like, what's the one thing different that we have in this day and age that they didn't really have the way we do?
What? Social media?
Like just technology in general and social media. And I think that that's like the one thing that is literally killing all of us, especially our young. And from like, suicides and depression and anxiety is at an all-time high. And I think that it's just going to get worse with AI and everything going on, the chips. That's my prediction is this is going to be wild.
Well, the medical
slowly. Yeah.
I think the medical, I don't know if it's a CDC, so don't quote me on this, but they just announced, or the FDA, maybe it was the FDA, that children at the age of 12 now can have surgery or are allowed to be given medicine for obesity.
That's right.
Yeah, like, I mean, come on. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, medicine? At that age, you're about even done growing. So, you got to maybe watch your diet, get a little more exercise. That's what we were talking about. I mean, and again, if we look at how much money that'll generate for these, I mean, I've lost complete faith in the medical community at this point. based on what
But
we've seen over the past few
I
years.
think you just
so.
need to hire my dad to show up at all the kids' houses
Yeah.
instead and be like, stop eating and get outside and run sprints.
but where they're
Yes,
Chris,
sir.
Look in the mirror. You should be ashamed of yourself.
I'm sorry, sir. I won't eat
but
again.
where is this coming from? Okay, again, leads back to
Greed.
social media. In my opinion, they're
Greed.
seeing all this stuff online and this body positive things. Like everything is being shared online, access at your fingertips, and so it's like, oh, take a pill for that. Oh,
How
this is
could that-
okay. It's okay to
Well, they're
be
like,
okay.
it's okay
How
to
could
be
that
fat
possibly-
until we can make
Right.
money on it.
Right.
you
How
know?
could that possibly be
No fat
the
shaming,
solution,
but
though?
Now
Yeah,
it's
right. No
sort of
fat shaming,
Yeah.
but you can get surgery and
Yeah.
be on pills.
right.
We're
'Cause
not
it
going
is
to talk to you
actually,
at all about being
Mhm.
being in a caloric deficit and physical activity and
maybe some
Mhm.
nutrition.
calories in, calories out.
Yeah.
That's all.
And
we're not going
compare-
to teach
and
you about
compare.
any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's not like it's literally impossible to not succeed if you follow these things.
Right.
It's and that
That's
also
we've been sold
comparison.
such a bill of goods
Mhm.
from I don't know if it's the medical field, partial fitness industry, because you'll hear people from fitness industry, the weight loss industry say, oh, well, it's not your fault that you have a bad metabolism, but here's what you need instead, where it's really nonsense. If you stick to those basics, it's impossible to screw it up. Most of the time when you hear people say, I shouldn't even say most of the time, when you hear somebody say to you, well, I'm just, I'm eating 1,000 calories a day and for whatever reason I can't lose weight.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and some
Somebody's
people have
not
some
being honest
rare.
with you. Sorry.
Sometimes like I have a thyroid issue and I definitely gained some weight when I was dealing with that, and there are some real true medical things, but at some point you have to, stop putting things in your mouth and exercise a little bit and watch what you're eating. But it's hard. I mean,
over an extended period of time, if you're tracking,
yeah,
you're really paying attention to what you're eating. You're seriously tracking them, and you're coming up with those numbers. And not just another thing people do is they'll do that 6 days a week, and then on the 7th day a week they'll have a cheat day.
right.
And they just ruin their entire week because they're no longer in a deficit, because you can eat that much.
Yeah, sure. You go eat like.
And then what happens to some people is the
do that,
cheat day becomes a cheat weekend, right?
Yeah,
And
then
then-
you're like,
and then the cheat weekend starts on Thursday and it ends on Tuesday.
It's really discipline. It's discipline, and most people have trouble with that.
And it's not fun to get into, especially when you're not already in the habit. When you're not in the habit and you're not doing that, it's tough to get
Sure.
into it or back into it if you at one point were and laid off. There's
Yeah,
no
and over the
question
past few
about
years,
that.
they were basically forcing everybody, especially kids, to stay home and stay inside, and the exact opposite of what would be beneficial if there's a virus running around that could ravage your body. I mean, it's just, come on now. It's
Anyhow,
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's that surgery and medicine at 12. It's just outrageous.
Well,
Yeah,
it's not just for that
outrageous.
too, guys. It's also for transitioning. It's for everything. Where does all that stem from? Information being seen on the internet that shouldn't be seen.
Yeah,
It's
and that the
really
fact
hard.
that that's allowed too by the medical community. Think about that. I mean, that's
Yeah. And it's not going in a better direction, put it that way. It's going in a
no.
worse direction. So that's where I agree. I feel like Chris, where I'm saying like there's a warning out there. It's just I don't know how to combat that. How do you combat that? The only thing is parents like stopping their kids from going on the social media, but they're going to see it at school. They're going to see it.
Well, the kids, they're being indoctrinated by the institutions, and that's the problem. And parents are working. Parents have to work, and a lot of parents have to both work. And the kids are being raised by the system. That's the problem, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Back in the day when people, had children, you grew your own, food, you had a garden or you had a farm. And in colonial times, you want to go way back, you didn't have an iPhone at the dinner table, and, look where we are now. So.
Right. And lastly, Mike, what is your New Year's resolution? Do you have one? And if anybody in the comments has them also, I would say put them out there.
I don't know if I'd call it a New Year's resolution, but it's something that started to make a commitment towards before the new year, and it sort of popped in my head, hey, this is something that this year I'm going to make sure that I do, is read more scripture and consume more biblical content, and start to replace that with some of the other shows that I would otherwise listen to. So
that's good.
I don't know if I would call it a resolution, but it's something that was the forefront of my mind where New Year started, and I would encourage everybody to, everybody to do the same. There's never a bad time to read more scripture and listen to more biblical content, right?
Absolutely.
I think we could all agree with that.
Yeah, especially now.
Yeah, we're all bad. I just like to ask people, are you a good person, Chris?
Am I?
Yeah.
I don't know. Define good.
Are you a good? Well, who defines good?
Exactly. Yeah. Probably not.
Who defines good? Who would you say defines
I'm a
good?
sinner.
Yeah,
God.
right?
Yeah, God. Yeah. So.
God defines good, and He's given us the 10 Commandments. Have you ever broken the 10 Commandments? I'm gonna start breaking into like a Ray Comfort accent right now. If you guys not listen to Ray Comfort from Living Waters, he's got this Australian accent. He's like, have you ever lied to anybody? How many lies?
Have you ever lied?
Have you ever looked at a woman with lust, Philly?
No, absolutely not.
The Bible says that if you looked at a woman with lust, you've committed adultery in your heart. So you're an adulterer at heart. Have you ever stolen anything? You just told me that you're a lying, thieving adulterer at heart. When Judgment Day comes and you stand before God, you're going to be innocent or guilty.
Guilty.
So if you're guilty, and there's only one way to pay the price, right?
Yes, sir. Although I'm hearing they're going to modify the 10 Commandments, and they're going to come out with like an 11th one for, to protect the earth from global warming and climate change. So we'll see. I
believe the Bible says something about.
Yeah, well,
Do not
I hear
adding to the Bible.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Well, let me find the verse so I can read it on the air. So
yeah. Let's check it out.
Oh my goodness.
There's something about. Let me see if I can find it.
Revelation 22, 18 and 19 in the New International Version. I warn everyone who hears the words of prophecy of the scroll. If anyone adds anything to them, God will add to that person the plagues described in this scroll. So I'd keep an eye out if I were those people. On the same token, just so you're aware, everybody, if anyone takes words away from the scroll of prophecy, God will take away from that person any share in the tree of life and in the holy city, which are described in this scroll.
Here's an article about
Deuteronomy 4:2. Hold on. Deuteronomy 4:2 says, "Do not add what I command you, and do not subtract from it, but keep the commands of the Lord your God that I give you." So, those are both pretty much right on the money.
Yeah.
Chris, can you unplug and plug back in or something?
Oh, sure.
Wild hissing.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Sounds like a violin, kind of like.
Liberty, what's your New Year's resolution? Oh, you already said it.
I already said, but I will say along the lines, I always had an issue with reading the Bible, like the timeline in my head, because I'm a very visual and auditory person. So when I'd read the King James, it was difficult for me. So I had to do NIV, but I've actually discovered this app, and it's Bible Gateway. I think Mike had sent the group a chat through, but I didn't realize they had an actual app. Bible Gateway. They would pop up on Google if you searched. Always you would see it, like Bible Gateway, but they have an app, and they have the most phenomenal reading of the Bible. It has like the noises, and they have the God voice, and they have Moses and everything, and I've never understood the Bible so clear in my life. And I'm reading it from the very beginning. And if you ever struggled with reading in that way, and you just want something like to listen to it's amazing. Bible Gateway.
the noise go away, guys? Better? Now?
Yes, it did. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Proceed, Philly Chris.
Thank you.
Did you have
Oh,
something?
I found an article about that whole 10 Commandments thing. Amid UN Climate Summit, religious leaders unveil new 10 Commandments. So I guess they already unveiled them. The new 10 Commandments were listed as, we are stewards of this world. Creation manifests divinity. Everything in life is interconnected. Do no harm. Look after tomorrow. Rise above ego for our world. Change our inner climate. Repent and return. Every action matters. Use mind, open heart. So there's several articles out there.
What is that, Philly Chris?
The UN Climate Summit, a bunch of religious leaders got together and they unveiled what they're calling the new 10 Commandments.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Actually, I got a letter in the mail from an environmental company.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have it handy?
Let me look and see. And in the meantime, I did some of the viewers commented their New Year's resolutions, guys.
Yeah. Okay. Let's
They
check it
did.
out.
Durso is also to get healthier. That's great.
Good.
That's great. Maybe we could have some more guests who talk about that, because that seems
That would
to
be good. That would be great.
An interesting thing.
Yeah.
Talking about working out.
Talk about, supplements and nutrition and all that stuff. It's good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you want to get in shape, nutrition's,
It's so important. We should probably have the Liver King on. He's an expert in all that stuff.
the steroid king.
Oh, man. I guess he's got that lawsuit against him now.
Yeah, all you need to do is eat liver and take 15 G's worth of steroids per month. That's all.
I was watching one clip where he was denying, he's like, look at my legs. I wouldn't have legs like this if I was on steroids.
Yeah. 15 grand worth of steroids per month.
Yeah. That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
Drug addiction.
Sauce king.
Got to get some chickens now, Mike.
Bread. I may have thrown it out. I think
Jeez, Liberty.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's
I
all
don't know what
psyched
I
up.
did, but I saved the bees one, but I threw that one away.
You got a bees questionnaire?
No, I have a save the bees. It's very serious. I got this big article about
Bees are important.
saving bees for a bag of bees. I mean,
save them in
there
a
we go.
bag.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I have this article. I have to have a place where I keep all the stuff that we get. But yeah, I had a survey about how important saving the environment and all of environmental stuff in Pennsylvania is to me. I don't know if anybody else out there got the survey. Let us know.
Len said Lisa Marie Presley, singer and daughter of Elvis, dies aged 54.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Wow.
And Rita says, I know she went into cardiac arrest earlier and was given CPR.
Oh, gosh. Oh, boy.
That's the third.
Arrest.
Oh my gosh. Diamond from Diamond and Silk.
Oh, right. That's right. I was going to mention that earlier. Yeah. You heard about that, Mike, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She had the turnip, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Trump made a comment about it.
We didn't talk about the football player at all. Maybe that's best left for another episode.
Yeah. I think we touched on it a
Because
little
I
bit.
don't think I want to just gloss over that.
Yeah.
That was rough to watch, man.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy. A lot of wacky stuff going on.
Yeah. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, now that we've ruined your week,
yeah. Right.
no, there's hope. There is hope. Just make sure you're armed with in the physical sense, in the mental sense, and in the spiritual sense. Right?
Absolutely, my friend.
That's the name of the game. Anything else for the good of the order?
I'm good. Peace and love, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Maybe a jam session this weekend.
Yes, damn right.
Liberty?
That's it. Thank you, guys.
That's all time we've got for today. Stick around for We the People, the Constitution Matters. Pastor Dave Whitney, Professor Phil Duffy. I'll be joining as your legal analyst. We miss you, Ellie. Daddy loves you.